Okay, welcome everybody to Book Bingo and Adventures by the Book. My name is Susan Macbeth. I'm the founder and owner of Adventures by the Book. And this has already been an adventure because this is the first time we have ever experienced where our chat box doesn't work, which normally isn't a big deal, except that we play Book Bingo in the chat box. So we're going to punt and do Plan B and play bingo in the Q&A section. So hopefully that works. I don't know. We're going to do our best. And if not, we'll find another way to give out random book prizes. But I want to give you a little bit of a, well, I was going to say a little bit of a rundown how Book Bingo works, but it's a little different this time. So the way it works is you each have your virtual bingo card that we have previously sent to you. If you did not receive it for some reason, we're not able to send it in the middle of Zoom, but you'll be able to play next time. And so Debbie will be calling the bingo calls in the Q&A box. So you'll need to be paying attention to that. We don't have the flexibility we do in the chat box. So if there's questions, I'm sorry that we're not able to get to those this time. You only need to have a horizontal, vertical, or diagonal bingo. You do not have to have a blackout. And Debbie, can you do a sample of how you're going to make a bingo call? So she's going to type bingo call in all caps, and then she'll name whatever it is that you're looking for on your bingo card. And then you will exit off on your bingo card. And when you have a bingo, you're going to announce it in the Q&A box. And then we will check winners at the end and announce who's won their books. I think that's it for the bingo section. So Debbie, did you want to do a sample? Oh, you did. Bingo call example. All right. So if an author says something that's on the bingo card, their name or the name of their book, that does not officially count as a bingo call. So is everybody in the audience in the Q&A box? Can somebody say that they see the Q&A box with the bingo call on there? I want to make sure that it is visible. All right. So they are saying that they can't see it in the Q&A box either. Wow.
Yeah.
This is very, but they can see, they can make a message. So I think what we'll do, I don't want to announce the bingo calls because then it's going to disrupt the authors. You know what? We may just do a Zoom presentation and all right, Debbie's able to chat with all the panelists and attendees. All right, Debbie, but you're as a panel. I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't know what to do. I've never experienced this before, and I think we need to move forward. So I think we're just going to go ahead with the Zoom invite, and then we'll randomly draw from the names who are remaining at the end of bingo. We will randomly draw for 6 winners and send you. I think that's the only way we can do it unless anybody has any other suggestions. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm sorry. All right. So Debbie's, oh, okay. Debbie's going to go ahead and make the bingo calls, but I don't know if everyone can see that.
Guess we'll find out.
Yeah, this is crazy. So she's gonna make the bingo calls. If you have a bingo, just send us an email afterwards. We'll notify you, or we'll do a random drawing. But we're going to go ahead and get started. And with my apologies again for the inconvenience to everybody. We'll start with Jeffrey Blount. Jeffrey is the author of 3 novels, which have won many awards, including a USA Best Book Awards, a Reader's Favorite Book Award for Young Adult Literature, a National Indie Excellence Award for African American Fiction, American Book Fest Best Book Award, and a Shelf Unbound 2019 Notable Book. In his most recent novel, which he will be discussing today, The Emancipation of Evan Walls, young Evan has a dream that will turn the sleepy town of Canaan upside down, forcing him to walk the slippery, angry slope between blacks and whites. The book is powerful, heart-wrenching, and a must-read. Nice to see you again, Jeffrey.
Thank you, Susan. Glad to be here. Would you like me to go a little less than 10?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
We'll give everyone their 10 minutes and we'll just opt out of the Q&A at the end. I want to give everyone their full 10 minutes.
Okay. Well, glad to be here, and hello to everyone. I am Jeffrey Blount, and this is The Emancipation of Evan Walls. This story is a very personal one for me, and it starts with Evan in his 30s. And his wife, Izzy, has just delivered their first child, a baby girl. And you would think he'd be feeling the responsibility of parenthood, but he'd be excited and thinking about all the great things that are about to happen in his life and his family's life. But actually, he's terrified, and he's just beside himself and about to come undone with fear that his daughter will suffer the same things that he suffered as a child. And he hasn't told his wife everything about his life. He hasn't been able to. But at this point, when she sees how much he's struggling, she asks him to tell her the whole story, that she can't help him save their daughter if he doesn't let her know what she has to look out for. So Evan decides, with his new baby in his wife's arms, to tell her a story. And Izzy is a little bit nervous because she's about to hear the full story and wonders if it might change how she feels about her husband. He takes us back to 1968, when he's 10 years old. He's on the back porch, and he is doing one thing he loves, which is to sit and listen to the adults talk. Every week they come to his house and they sit on the back porch and they discuss life. Well, on this particular day, one of the participants is upset, and Evan can see that. And he watches him and he watches him until this character, this man named Bojack, stands up and starts to preach. He is upset. Schools are about to be integrated in the fall, and he doesn't feel that Black parents have done enough to stand by the children and to provide for them. And he talks about how his own parents did not provide for him, and that he feels like his life is kind of lost. Evan is inspired by that. Already, we know, we'll find out, is a brilliant child, loves to read and is a thinker. And so when he hears this man talk on the porch, he becomes inspired. And he stands up and makes a declaration. And he says, I'm going to become somebody. And I don't care if I have to go to school with white kids, I'm going to be somebody. And to his surprise, the adults on the porch don't react positively to him. In fact, Evan would go ahead and follow his dream, but he would find himself going between two very different cultures. On one hand, when schools integrated, the white population really didn't want him there and didn't believe that he was capable. And he was the uppity N-word. And it would have hurt, but in 1968, he wouldn't have been surprised. But he was devastated by the reaction of his own community, who decided that what he was doing was color-coded white, and that he was trying to be white in order to get by. So Evan would spend the rest of his time growing up in his hometown between these two worlds, and most importantly, trying to prove how truly Black he was, so that he could remain a part of his culture and his community. And the truth is, it's quite an uphill battle. Now, I have a personal part in this story, in that this is something that I went through on a minor level as compared to Evan. But I studied other cases of other children, and one case in particular, a Black reporter goes to what we call the projects back then, and finds a story of a young Black boy who goes to school every day. He loves going to school. He's a great student. He's a straight A student, but he gets beaten up every day or emotionally abused every day by kids from his own community who believe that he's doing something that's color-coded white. And the reporter finds a mother and he asks her, how are you doing? I know that this is a terrible thing that's happening to your son. I'm impressed by him, that he continues to do what's best for him, even though he's taking this punishment. And she says to the reporter, I wish he would just want to grow up to be a janitor or something and stop causing me so much trouble. She didn't want what her son was doing to reflect badly on her within her community and push her outside her community. So she was downgrading and hoping that her son would not continue his dream. This is something that I have seen many, many times. It's very controversial within the African-American community. Many people don't even want to believe that it's true. It helped when in 2013, then First Lady Michelle Obama was speaking at Bowie State at the graduation commencement. And she said, my husband often says that we need to reject the slander that a Black child with a book is trying to act white. We need to reject that. President Obama went on CNN and raised the same issue. But for me, it felt a little too late in that by then children were already taking their lives. Children were already being brutalized in school, and parents were suing school districts because of it. So people have asked me, well, why didn't you write a nonfiction book and tell us about your story? Or why didn't you write a nonfiction book about the issue, since I have reams and reams of documents and folders on this issue. And as far as I was concerned, I said, for me, if I wrote this as a memoir, then you could say, this is a Jeffrey story. And even if it were a hard story to take and you felt bad for me, you would say, at least it's just a Jeffrey story. When I write a fictional account of the issues that so many of these kids carry, to me, it feels like something broader, that when people read it, they don't associate it to one issue. They associate it with the possibility and the reality that this is happening to many children. And so as a former journalist, I have a mindset of seeing the facts of the reality, but I chose to write fiction because I love fiction first and foremost. But I also know, we all know, that fiction creates empathy in the reader. We can carry that story, we can carry that book, we can come back to it, and we can feel for it. And I will tell you that for me, the book is doing exactly what I had hoped it would do. I have spoken to a worldwide audience about this particular issue. I have spoken to several nonprofits in this country who operate to help kids like Evan Walls, and not just Evan Walls, but all gifted children, and for the many different reasons. And a lot of people just didn't know this happened. This kind of thing happened. So the story, Evan Walls' story, is now beginning to change lives. Not only that, it's beginning to change the vision of professionals who are there to help the kids. It's enlightened them to the fact that this problem exists, and people are now acting on this. There's probably going to be a colloquial, a group, I can never say the word right, a group meeting in Morgan State in the winter and fall, where they'll be discussing this, among other things, about gifted kids. So this particular story has done its thing. And I just want to leave you with, to tell you how powerful it is. And in reality, this is an email I got from a teacher. I cannot begin to tell you the impact your book, The Emancipation of Evan Walls, has had on me. As a school counselor, I witnessed the degradation of smart African-American boys who had so much academic ability, but didn't want to take the harder classes because of the ridicule they received from their peers. I have shed many tears over poor Evan. And then this from a man who had seen me give an interview about the book. Hi, Jeffrey, I listened to your interview this morning and I almost cried. I was a Black kid that grew up with my brother and mother on the main line in the suburbs of Philadelphia. I'm now 70, and the pain you described does not go away. I have so much work to do. With all of that, Toni Morrison reminds us that this story is a story of systemic racism, and without systemic racism, we wouldn't have this story. And this story is a subset of systemic racism. But with all of that, I want you to know as a reader that it is still a story of empowerment. It is still a story of redemption in many ways. It's a story of struggle. And I will tell you that it ends very thoughtful and makes you as a reader think, but it also ends, I think, with us believing in Evan. And one of my favorite quotes is the last thing I'll read: as in any war, we don't come out unscathed, but our scars prove we are alive and have persevered. And that's the emancipation of Evan Walls. Thank you.
Wow, powerful words indeed. And I can attest to the fact that this book is a must read. I mean, it's incredibly powerful. It's heartbreaking. It's Jeffrey and I did a whole 5-part series of conversations on race on the Fireside platform, and it was really, really meaningful. I highly encourage you to read his book. Thank you, Jeffrey. And for those of you who are joining us late, you'll notice that we're doing bingo a little differently today. And that is because we are having technical difficulties, and your chat box is not working for you in the audience. It's working for the panelists. So you will see the panelists type in there. So Debbie's doing the best job she can typing the bingo calls in the chat box and also in the Q&A box. And you guys can respond in the Q&A box. I know it's a little complicated and frustrating, and I'm sorry for that. And we will make sure we get it fixed before the next book bingo. All right, on to Denise Heinze. Is it Heinze or Heinze?
Heinze.
Thank you.
Mhm.
All right, Denise Heinze is an award-winning author who has published scholarly work, essays, memoirs, poetry, and fiction. Her debut historical fiction, The Brief and True Report of Temperance Flower Dew, was a finalist in the University of New Orleans Press Publishing Lab Prize. A transporting and evocative story, The Brief and True Story of Temperance Flower Dew is a fiercely hopeful novel, a portrait of two intrepid women who choose to live out their dreams of a future freer than the past. We can't wait to hear more. Welcome, Denise.
Thank you. So nice to be here, and good evening to everyone. Jeffrey, really, truly an amazing presentation. My scholarly work was focused on Toni Morrison, by the way, so I always love to hear you quote her. And in terms of racial issues, I'm going to go all the way back to the beginning in Jamestown. And my novel doesn't begin in 1619, but of course, as we all know, that's when the first enslaved Africans were brought to America. I wrote about Jamestown because I wanted to know what it would have been like to live there. I wanted to learn about two of the two first women to inhabit Jamestown, and what would compel them to go on this treacherous journey to live in a ramshackle fort in the middle of a vast wilderness. And Jamestown wasn't necessarily an historical period that I was particularly interested in, but like all ideas that tend to come to me, it kind of came out of the blue, and it was serendipitous. I was watching a History Channel documentary, and it was about Jamestown and the period known as the Starving Time, 1609 to 1610. And it was so fascinating that I had to do what probably most all of you do when you learn about something and want to know more. I Googled it. So I came across the name of Temperance Flower Dew, a woman I'd never heard of, even though I taught early American literature for a number of years at the university level. And she was a woman of some power and prestige in the early years of Jamestown. I continued to do some searches online, and then came across an article about an archaeological dig at Jamestown that unearthed the bones of a teenage girl in a refuge pile off the kitchen. And in that moment, after watching the documentary, learning about temperance, and then hearing about this discovery, I just knew that this was something I absolutely had to write about. Typically, when I do come across an idea like this that I just can't let go of, that's when I know that I have something that I have to make sense of for myself and hopefully be able to convey to readers. But just to give you a little bit of an idea about what I went through in terms of the research, after I did the initial Google search, I then went to print sources and read as many books and articles and newspaper accounts that I could find, just to be able to give me some kind of background as to the lives of these two women. They were young women at the time when they crossed the Atlantic. Temperance was probably in her early 20s, and the character I've named Lily, she was roughly between 14 and 16 years of age. And so there was a little bit of information about Temperance in the historical record, but absolutely nothing about this unknown anonymous girl who was just found in this dig. So I knew that that was the gap that allowed me as a novelist into that space to be able to create and imagine who these women might have been. I refer to Temperance's diary as a brief report because at the time, so many explorers and settlers and colonists would send back reports and diaries and journals to document their time in the so-called New World. And there's really no evidence that Temperance had any kind of diary or report. But I thought, if she did, what would she have said, and how would she have characterized her time there? And so in order for me to know these women, I had to imagine them within the context of the historical record that exists. So that was really an interesting experience. And then eventually the most interesting experience of all was when I actually went to Jamestown and visited the original site. And if anybody's been there, I'm sure any number of you. Oh, great. Yeah. And once you get there, it's like just a little spit of land on the James River, which flows off the Chesapeake Bay, which goes into the Atlantic Ocean. And so you look around initially, and the archaeological digs are going on, and there are a couple of structures, but other than that, and a statue of John Smith, there's just you and the space that was inhabited by these early settlers, and indigenous groups, and then enslaved Africans, all of whom converged on this site. But I didn't get a whole lot of inspiration standing at the original site. So then I went over to the museum called the Arcarium. And that's a museum of sort of dusty bones and artifacts. And that was a really fascinating experience, because once in this museum, I was surrounded by all of the accoutrements of the individuals who had lived there that archaeologists had been able to recover. So things like buttons and shoes and books and the most fascinating bones. And I had a friend with me who's not big on going to museums, but she sort of indulges my tendencies. And within the first 10 minutes, she started to feel a little claustrophobic and had a little trouble breathing. And she said, "Hey, I have to get out of here." And I said, "Okay." I could linger for hours in a museum. You shut the lights out on me and I'd still be wandering around looking at some of the displays. But I also began to feel this sort of atmospheric pressure and discomfort, especially when I was around the full skeletons of these individuals. And eventually I had to get out of there. And within minutes, as I walked back to the original site, I felt better. But there was something about being in the presence of all of those artifacts and bones that really was disturbing and ultimately inspiriting. So as I went back to the original site, I had a new perspective, and I went to the graveyard where so many of the colonists had died from various diseases. And I had a new perspective. When I actually began to write the novel, I started with Temperance and the character I've named Lily. Lily is Temperance's maidservant, and they travel together and they go through this ordeal in order to try to negotiate this terrain that's so hostile. But eventually, and this has never happened to me before in terms of writing a novel, I started hearing these sort of shouts, like, "Tell my story, tell my story." And so it would startle me. And so I had to shift from writing about Temperance and Lily and their ordeal and some of the other inhabitants of Jamestown that I'd come across while I was researching the novel. And so there ensued a number of chapters about these other characters, so to speak, who had their own experiences that enlivened the novel in ways that I had not anticipated. And so this has been a real experience for me, especially as I learn more and more about Jamestown. And the 1619 project has really opened my eyes to a potential sequel that I could write in terms of what happened subsequent to that 1609-1610 period. And so ultimately, for me as a writer, I can't time travel to Jamestown, but I have my imagination. And with my imagination and the historical record that exists, I can create something that for me is indelible, and I hope also indelible for my readers. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise. Sounds fascinating. And I know that Debbie typed in the chat box that a perfect read leading up to Thanksgiving in terms of the time period. What a very difficult journey for the first settlers. So great reading for the holidays for sure. Thank you. Next up is Robert Kerbeck, and I know that I don't need to make any more announcements about the bingo and the chat box being disabled for some reason. Debbie's doing a great job juggling between the chat box and the Q&A. So if you joined us late, just check there and you'll see what's going on. Robert Kerbeck is up next. He fought one of the worst fires in California history, the 2018 Woolsey fire, to save his own home. His award-winning nonfiction debut, Malibu Burning, tells the real story behind LA's most devastating wildfire. His new memoir, Ruse, Lying the American Dream from Hollywood to Wall Street, is a thrilling look into the world of corporate espionage and his career as a secret spy. Sounds so intriguing. Tell us more, Robert.
Oh, well, thank you. Thanks for having me. Yeah, you probably don't meet too many corporate spies. My publisher told me this is the first book that's ever been written about the world of corporate spying. I started out, my family comes from Philadelphia. They're very well known in the automobile business. My great-grandfather sold horse carriages before automobiles were invented. He saw the writing on the wall and he switched to selling cars. My grandfather took over that dealership. My father took over that dealership, and I was supposed to take over that dealership. But somewhere along the way in college, I fell in love with acting and I wanted to be an actor. But I didn't know anybody that had ever tried to be a professional actor. And so when I graduated college, I went to work for my father in the car business. And it just didn't feel right for me. The kind of dishonesty of sales and the trickery involved, it just didn't work for me. So you can imagine the irony when I ended up stumbling into a job as a corporate spy, which ended up being far more dishonest. And so basically what happened is I went to New York. I needed a survival job, as actors often do. I didn't have the patience to be a waiter. I wasn't a late night guy, so bartending was out. And a friend of mine had this very mysterious job. He kind of started talking about it, and then right away he shut up. And I pressed him on it and he wouldn't tell me anything. And I said, come on, man, I'm broke. I need a job, please. And so finally he agreed to set me up with this interview. And so the next day I went to the Upper East Side, and your listeners and viewers probably know the Upper East Side is kind of the ritziest area of Manhattan. And I was living in Hell's Kitchen in a cave with two other people. And so I go to the Upper East Side. It's a doorman building. I get sent up to the penthouse. This woman opens the door. I seem to remember that she had a martini and a cigarette, but that just might be the writer in me just exaggerating things slightly. The book is true, but every once in a while the writer can't risk a little bit of exaggeration is a good thing. She brings me into this apartment, which was to this day the nicest apartment I've ever seen. Everything was white. She had a white rug on the ground, which I later learned was polar bear. And I knew right away, whatever this woman did, it was lucrative, right? Whatever she was doing, she was making a lot of money. And so we have this interview where she never asks me anything about my skills. I had a resume. She never asked me for my resume. And she sends me on my way. And I was pretty sure I didn't get whatever this job was. But then my buddy calls me later and says, you're hired. And I kind of started to get excited about it. And he said, don't get excited. She hires everyone because no one is able to do this job. And the next day I went out to Brooklyn to begin training at the apartment of a woman. And this is back in the day when Brooklyn was not full of hipsters and coffee shops. Brooklyn was a very dangerous place. It was run down. And I take this, I walk up the fourth floor walk up, and this young woman opens the door and she says, come on in, you'll work in my bedroom. And I started to get a little concerned about what the job actually entailed. But she takes me in and there's a desk there and she sits me down and she begins to explain that what we're going to do is we call corporations and we talk people into revealing their innermost secrets. We all know that the Russians spy on the Chinese and the Chinese spy on us. What most people are shocked to find out is that major corporations are spending hundreds of millions of dollars a year to spy on each other. And that's what I did. And so that I began my apprenticeship as a corporate spy. And, I justified the spying because I knew it wasn't ethical, but I justified it in that, it was just temporary. I was an actor. I was going to be famous as an actor, and I was beginning to work all the time. I became a member of the Actors Studio. I did a play at the Actors Studio. Paul Newman came backstage afterwards to congratulate me on my performance. The next day, Joanne Woodward invited me up to their apartment for a reading in which I read the Paul Newman part of a race car driver. I had interactions with Al Pacino. I did a TV show on a series with an actor you may have heard of, George Clooney. He was on a show called Sisters, and I killed George on Sisters because he had to move on to another show that you may have heard of called ER. I don't know what happened to George Clooney, but I hope he's doing okay. And so I had all of these acting jobs. I was working all of the time. I was doing plays in New York, but the spying was always how I supported myself. And at a couple of points, we had some close calls with the authorities. As you can imagine, obviously the job is not, especially ethical. And the question of whether it was legal was always at the forefront of our minds. And we finally went and sat with an attorney, me and my buddy, and the attorney said, it's in the gray, the very dark gray. And at one point, we were hunted by basically every authority, the US Marshals, the Secret Service, the FBI, because they were searching at the time for the world's most famous hacker who was, they believe, trying to shut down the internet. This is in the mid-90s when the internet was first becoming commercially accessible. And this hacker was wreaking havoc. And somehow they stumbled onto our trail, which, of course, as you can imagine, was pretty frightening. And fortunately for us, right when they were about to bring us in, they found this hacker. They arrested him. They put him in shackles. They put him in solitary confinement. He went to jail for years as a domestic terrorist. And fortunately for us, unfortunately for him, once the authorities kind of got their man, they were so busy patting themselves on the back that they forgot about us, and they just kind of let us go. So we were very lucky that we had kind of escaped this. And the book Ruse, it's nonfiction, it's all true, but it reads like a spy novel. And I wrote it during COVID, and as we all lived through COVID, it was a really terrible, horrible time. And so I really wanted to write a book that was fun. It's a really quick read. If you like, it's kind of two books in one. There's one book, which is the corporate spying book, and then there's the other book that's the celebrity encounters book. And so I have all of these crazy encounters. I worked with O.J. Simpson in this exercise video that he did. My manager at the time called me up and said, hey, there's this exercise video. They're looking for guys. And I said, well, look, I can't dance. I'm the worst dancer in the history of mankind. They said, no, there's no dancing. It's with O.J. Simpson. And I said, O.J. Simpson, oh my God, he was my hero as a football player. And, I thought he was a good actor in a couple of movies, and I loved him on Monday Night Football. So I was very excited to do it. And I show up on the set to do this exercise video with OJ, and there's a dance floor, and there's a choreographer, and I begin to sweat, and the choreographer starts to teach us these routines that we have to do, and I'm so bad he stops right away, and he comes over and he says, what the hell are you doing here? And OJ says, hey, no, Rob, he's okay. Rob's making me look good. And my bad dancing made OJ's dancing look good. And so OJ wanted me in the video. So if people were looking at any bad dancing, it was mine, not his. And that started this very bizarre friendship. For whatever reason, he really liked me. He, at one point, takes me over to this little TV on the side, and he pops in a video cassette. Again, this is 90s. And he says, hey, this is the pilot I just shot for NBC. It's this new series called Frogmen. And I play a knife expert in the series, right? I mean, you just can't make these things up, right? Truth is stranger than fiction. And so you can imagine, so we have all of these interactions. And then, as you can imagine, a week later, the murders happened, and I was as shocked as anybody. But I did see things on the set that were quite disturbing, and I write about these in the book. OJ has remained a part of my life. You know, a few years ago, they did a TV series with Cuba Gooding, and they recreated the exercise video in the TV series, which means an actor got hired to play me, which I thought was pretty funny. And his dancing, yes, was very bad. So Ruse is a lot of fun, and I think it gives insight into a pretty crazy world, corporate espionage. You see the lengths that companies will go to spy on each other. I describe it like, imagine in football terms, if you could get the playbook on your opponent, you know, a couple days before the big game, how valuable would that be? And every corporation in America is doing this. They're hiring spies to find out anything and everything they can about their competitors. So I hope people enjoy it. If you do, please reach out. I'd love to hear from fans. And that's all I got. And thank you for having me.
Wow, thank you, Robert. That is quite the story. And I was just thinking as you were talking about it, this could be a movie that you write the book, you write the screenplay, and you star in it. And I don't know if it's ever done that.
Well, it's funny because it is in development for a movie. Frank Abagnale, who wrote Catch Me If You Can, gave me a lovely blurb. And when the guy who wrote Catch Me If You Can gives you a blurb, people in Hollywood notice that. And so it's in development for a TV series. And as we talked about, I was an actor. I'm, of course, too old to play my younger self, but they're asking me to consider playing my father in the piece because my father's a big part of the book. And that would just be amazing.
That is fantastic. Wow, what a story. So thank you. Yeah, you'll all have to get the book and learn all the juicy details. Thank you, Robert. Next up is Kerry Anne King, who is a Washington Post and Amazon Charts best-selling author who writes compelling and transformational stories about family and personal growth with elements of mystery, humor, and an undercurrent of romance. And often you will find a touch of magic. In Kerry Ann's new novel, Improbably Yours, an unusual inheritance leads to a life-changing journey of romance, secrets, and the treasure of found family. And we love secrets. Welcome, Kerry.
Hi, it's so fun to be here. I have to say, first off, Robert, you are not the worst dancer. That would be me. If I was in that video, everybody would have looked really good. So, you know, just saying. I'm also, everybody's got all of these wonderful fact-based stories that their books are built on here today. And I'm here to tell you, I just made it all up. I do that. I like to do that. Although my stories are based on a long history I have working in the mental health and medical professions. So I watch people and I know people, and I like to pull those things into my books and then make things weird and wonderful. So I got to make up an island for this book. And my research it did involve some Google, but my research trip, it was very difficult. And I want you to know the life of a writer is very hard. My partner and I had to go to the San Juan Islands and hang out and explore and take the ferry and eat amazing food at a fresh oyster farm and, you know, do all that kind of stuff. So that was just really challenging. But let me tell you a little bit about the book. The main character in my story is she's turning 30. It's her birthday and she's not happy about this. Blythe does not want to be 30 because her life has gone off the rails in what everybody else thinks is a good way. So she's about to get a job that she really doesn't want. That's a high profile, high pressure kind of a job. There's a guy who wants to marry her that every woman should be happy to have. And all of this is happening on this day, and it's too late for her to back out, she thinks. So 30th birthday, everybody is gathered for the huge party. The man of everybody else's dreams is actually on his knees in front of God and everybody proposing to her. Blythe is going to have to say yes. She just can't think of a way to say no when she's saved by a little balloon man who comes in through the back gate with a bequest from her deceased grandmother. Grandma has ashes that apparently were not spread after her funeral. Those might have been some happy little dogs that had now have a field to play in. Anyways, Blythe is given a bequest to go to this island that she thinks is mythical, that she drew the map for when she was a child, to go there, find the right place, and bury grandma's ashes in the place that she wants them to be. So that's how the story starts out and takes us to an island called Vinland. And as you can see, I actually made myself a t-shirt. Vinland Island, you can't see the whole thing. There you go. So on this island, every summer, there is a treasure hunt where people can come and play this treasure hunting game. I based it on this weird little book called The Secret. And this is not The Secret as in Law of Attraction. It's weird. I saw it on TV. This guy, I can't remember his name. I don't have the book. I don't have any of the stuff, but I did research it a little bit. He hid things all over the country in national parks. And then he put this book together that there's a weird picture and a weird poem. If you've ever looked, the pictures are weird, the poems are weird, and all of these people got busy trying to decipher the poem and the picture and figure out where the little treasure thing was hidden. And if you find it, then you turn it in and you actually get a jewel of some kind. So this got my attention going because I love treasure hunts, and that was part of what inspired my treasure hunt on the island as well. We also have an old house that's kind of a little bit maybe haunted, has some ravens that like to live on the roof, and there's romance, of course, because my books always have a little bit of that in there. That's really, I don't have a whole lot to tell you. It was fun to write. There was all kinds of adventures in my head as I was writing it, and I am putting together a treasure hunt. That's the other thing I want to tell you. I am planning a treasure hunt for readers. This will happen during a blog tour on Instagram that starts in October, and I am going to be giving away one of these very fine t-shirts that I designed myself, and a copy of the book, and a very fun little pendant with ravens on a world tree. And if you're interested in playing along with me, you can either go to my website, which is just allthingskerry.com, or you can go to a bit.ly/improbablyyourstreasure and sign up to get your own treasure map and play with me. And that's all I've got.
Thank you, Kerry. And who doesn't love a good treasure hunt?
Right.
Yes, sounds like fun. Thank you. All right, up next is Gill Paul. And again, I have to publicly apologize for Gill. I think in the 11 years we've been in business, I can count on one hand the number of technical difficulty events we've had. And poor Gill has experienced 2 of those probably 3 times in just the last couple of weeks. So I'm glad she's here today so we can hear her chat more. Gill Paul's historical novels have reached the top of the USA Today, Toronto Globe and Mail, and UK Kindle charts, have been translated into 20 languages. In her recent book, The Manhattan Girls, a novel of Dorothy Parker and her friends, it is New York, 1921. The war is over, fashions are daring, and bootleg liquor is abundant. Here, 4 extraordinary women form a bond and a bridge group that grows into a firm friendship. Nice to see you again, Gill. And just to remind you, she is joining us from Europe, so where it is quite late, and she's a good sport. She's a good sport for doing that. Welcome, Gill.
Oh, thank you so much. Can you hear me? Yes. Yeah, good. Phew. I'm worried about the technical thing. So yeah, no, I've written 11 historical novels, actually 12, because I sent back the edits on the 12th one today. So I think that counts as 12. And they tend to be about real historical characters, women in particular. And this one, my 11th, I'm going to try and share the screen here. It worked earlier, so here we go. This is it. It's called The Manhattan Girls. And it's a novel about Dorothy Parker and her friends. The publisher's elevator pitch is Sex and the City set in the 1920s, because it's got 4 women in it who were living in Manhattan at the time, juggling careers, relationships, cars, bootleggers, and men behaving badly generally. And I just always wanted to write about Dorothy Parker. Since I was a teenager, I was fascinated by her life, and her humor just hasn't dated since the 1920s. So quotes like this, I mean, we can all think of a vast number of contemporaries that this could easily refer to. So my novel opens in 1921, by which time Dorothy was already a famed wit. She was hanging out in the Algonquin Hotel, as you probably know, with a load of journalists, hacks who sat around laughing at each other's jokes and thinking up lines to come to bring to the party the next day. And I wasn't particularly interested in writing about them. I was looking for another angle to write about Dorothy and explore the era. And then I read that she joined a bridge group with 3 other women. And when I looked into it, each of these women was a fascinating character in her own right. So on the top left here, we've got Jane Grant, who was the first woman reporter at the New York Times, who was a big campaigner for women's rights. She was in the Lucy Stone League to allow women to keep their maiden names on marriage. She campaigned to get more women into journalism. She was also married to Harold Ross, and they were trying to co-found a magazine together, which I don't know if any of you are aware of which magazine. I won't give it away if not. But she had a great big story. In the top right, Winifred Lenihan was a Broadway actress at the time, doing really well, voted one of the 10 most beautiful women in the world by McCall's magazine readers. But that beauty and her fame tended to bring her the wrong kind of attention from men. In the bottom left, we've got Peggy Leach, who, when my story opens, she was working at Condé Nast magazines, but she was trying to write novels in the evening. And she went on to become very successful and famous, and in the years that I'm writing about. And then we've got poor Dorothy here in the bottom right, who was, incredibly funny, but she was always a very lost and tortured character, particularly in this era, because her background was very sad. Her mother had died when she was 5. Her father remarried very quickly, and then her stepmother died when she was 9. Her father died when she was a teenager. She lost an uncle on the Titanic, and her brother just left the family and was never heard of again. So she comes into her adult life, into the 1920s, with this huge vulnerability and emotional neediness. And of course, as quite often happens with people like that, she looked for love with all the wrong kinds of men, and got hurt a lot, and had a difficult time. Oh, I've jumped pictures there. This is a quote that she said at the time. When my story starts, she'd just lost her job at Vanity Fair, where she'd been the theatre critic, because she criticised the wife of one of the major advertisers in the magazine, compared her to an erotic review dancer, which wasn't really very wise. Lost her job, and her first marriage to Eddie Parker is just about on the rocks. So when she starts this bridge group, she's really pretty needy. She's going downhill, and the 3 women pile in and try to, between them, take care of Dorothy and look after her and help to pull her up. It's just this, I was just fascinated by this combination of the emotional fragility plus the rapier wit, and how both of them work together. And it was interesting to look, and she's working in a world where men rule. It's very, especially in the Algonquin, it was quite misogynist. I absolutely loved writing in the 1920s in Manhattan. When you can imagine, if you could go back in a time machine, that is absolutely where I would go. The kind of the camaraderie of passing your hip flask under the table in bars, or sharing the password to get into the local speakeasy that week, or going to jazz clubs where they were mostly still segregated, as Jeffrey would tell us. It was the black musicians on stage and the white folk dancing, but there were some that were becoming integrated in that time. There were loads of new dances coming out. There was the samba, the Charleston, the black bottom, the shimmy. And I decided to set myself, 2 months before the novel was published, I set myself the challenge of learning the Charleston from online videos, and completely forgetting that, number one, I'm a really rubbish dancer, as 2 other people have confessed to tonight. And number two, can I tell you, the Charleston is fiendishly difficult, fiendishly. I got myself the headband, you know, to try and look the part, but then I did the kind of one step forward, one step back, move the hand thing, and it got all that. And then it says swivel your feet. So how can you swivel your feet while you're doing this? Anyway, I don't know how to get a video to work in a Zoom call, so I'm not going to embarrass myself by showing you that, but it is on my Instagram and TikTok account if anybody is particularly keen to see it. But I wanted to travel a little bit inside their world. I didn't actually make my own bathtub gin, which I should have done, but from all the recipes that I've collected, it looks absolutely horrendous. You know, ethanol plus a few juniper berries, a bit of water, and leave it in a still for a while. I decided not to try that, but I did do the dancing. So in my other historical novels, in all my historical novels, I'm trying to get inside the heads of the women. Oh, I've jumped pictures again. This is not infallible. There we are. So these are some of the women I've written about. Mostly I write about 20th century women that I think have been misjudged or ignored in some cases by historians. Obviously, you can see some very famous ones there that haven't been ignored, but I had a slightly different angle. I wanted to reassess them from a different angle. The ones you may not recognize, well, top row, second from the left, is Florence Nightingale, so she's a bit earlier. I wrote about her during the Crimean War. Next to her is Lady Evelyn Herbert, who was the first person to crawl inside Tutankhamun's tomb when it was discovered in 1922. But that is always said to have been Lord Carnarvon, the sponsor, and Howard Carter, the archaeologist. And Lady Evelyn was there. She's in all the pictures. She's said by them to have been the first in. Why is nobody telling her story? So this is what I do. I kind of look for the stories of women that have not been told or have been, have been misjudged. I mean, certainly with Maria Callas, I felt she'd always been portrayed as this great diva, and I wanted to reassess what she was like as a person. So it's a strange way to earn a living. You know, I kind of sit down in the morning and pretend to be somebody else, but I'm enjoying it so far. It's a lot of fun. I can often make myself cry when I'm sitting at my desk, but I'm just hoping that I'm not going to start yawning here tonight, because as Susan mentioned, it's 2 minutes past 1 in the morning here in London. It's a very strange time because the entire city is filling up with mourners for the royal funeral. There's a queue 5 miles long, stretching along the Thames all the way from London Bridge to Parliament Square for people to file past the Queen's coffin. And every public building, the church at the end of my road, have condolence books and flowers and candles and so forth. So it's a very strange time to be in London, but very moving as well. And, you know, I just really hope, I mean, the Queen was an extraordinary woman, no matter what your view of monarchy. It's even just as a piece of great pageantry and theatre, I think the British royal family are worth keeping an eye on. So, but I'm hoping that this death helps to heal rifts in countries and, you know, with all the nations that are coming together for her funeral, and also in their own family with any luck. But now I'm going to let everybody get back to their bingo, and good luck to everybody who's playing. And it's been really lovely to join you tonight. So I'll now try and get out of this sharing thing. And look at that, I managed it. Yay.
Great. Thank you so much, Jill. And thank you for the words about the Queen. And you're right, there's a lot of healing to be going on in our world. And hopefully this will help with that. So our condolences on the loss of your Queen as well. And thank you for joining us so late at night. You're a great spirit. And I wanted to remind everyone, we still are looking forward to hearing from Joe, but I did want to remind everyone that Novel Network is played because all of our participating authors are Novel Network members, which means that they are looking forward to chatting with book club groups. And you can go to our website, novelnetwork.com, and for free, register your book club. Enjoy our database of about 150 authors who are ready, willing, and able and want to chat with you via Zoom, Skype, however you want to set it up. And you can tell from hearing them tonight what great stories they have to share and how passionate they are. So I hope you will do that. And last but certainly not least is Joe Stillman, who co-wrote Shrek for DreamWorks, which earned him an Academy Award nomination for Best Adapted Screenplay and the Annie and BAFTA Awards. His other produced features include Beavis and Butthead Do America, Shrek 2, Gulliver's Travels, Planet 51, and Joseph, King of Dreams. The Man Who Came and Went, his novel of the New West, is a magically realistic story for the modern era that will tease your understanding and beliefs and draw you into the mysteries of the universe. We love mysteries. We love magic. Take it away, Joe. We're happy you're here.
Hi, thank you, Susan, and thank you, Debbie, and thanks everybody for being here today, tonight, or in the middle of the night, whatever your time zone might be. I'm a comedy writer, and it's a little bit weird for me to say that because it's not anything that I had ever set out to do. And kind of by chance, I got to work on some stuff that was a lot of fun. I just did a draft, just as an example, for a movie that's going to be produced for streaming. That's a sequel to Half Baked. And if you don't know Half Baked, it's a stoner comedy. The original one was written by and starred Dave Chappelle. And being a comedy writer, I both love it, but I always wanted to do more, and wanted to do a project that would be, from the heart and soul, as well as being funny, and maybe even on the deep side. So back in the day, and when I say back in the day, I really mean way back in the day, when I was just starting out, I got an idea for an independent movie screenplay. That screenplay eventually became this book. See how I do my product placement? And the idea was low budget. It was set in a small town diner, and I figured, cool, I'll write it in 2 months. It'll be easy, and I'll go out and make it, right? Because it's an independent film. So I did a draft, actually did a couple of drafts, and then I worked on a job and came back after the job and read it and wasn't quite there. So I did another draft and went and worked on another job. And after each time I would finish a draft, I felt like Yahoo, I found it. I found what I was looking for. And I'd go on to do the next job. And when I would come back after the job and read it, I would invariably realize that it still wasn't there. So 2 months became a few years, became 10 years, became 20 years. And it's no longer out of the question to think that I might be the world's biggest loser. And the thing is, the screenplay itself was actually pretty good, even early on. My agent showed it around town, as agents do, and people really responded to it. I got some jobs based on it, and there were some actors that were interested. I met with Judge Reinhold, I met with Heather Graham, Kristen Chenoweth, you might know her from Wicked. She wanted to turn it into a Broadway musical. And she brought in Kathleen Marshall, a famous director that she works with, and they had some songs written for it. But the story I knew still wasn't there. And it wasn't doing what I really thought that it could do, but couldn't figure out how to make it do. So it's 25 years now that I have done this on my own time, and over 40 drafts. And I finally think, well, maybe it's a novel. That I could try it, at least it'll have a life. And the minute I started writing, the story just like clicked into place, like it had been waiting for that. So about the story, and this is in brief, there's this small sleepy town in Arizona, and it has a diner. It's Maybell's Diner, where all the locals go. There's not that many locals, so it's never really crowded. And Maybell of Maybelle's Diner is a single mom. She has 3 kids from 3 different fathers. And her oldest, her daughter Belutha, is 16 years old and our storyteller. Now, Belutha's one goal in life is to keep her mom from procreating yet again, and then to leave this coffin-sized town the second she graduates high school. One day, a man walks into the diner just as the grill cook storms off and quits. And this man, his name is Bill, he winds up getting the job. And the thing about Bill is that he's not just a good cook, he actually knows what people want to eat before they order. Not only what they want to eat, but he actually knows exactly how they want it. And it's kind of a miracle. Word starts to spread and people start coming to this small town from all over because they want to get their orders mind read. Now, some of the people who come believe that Bill knows the secrets of the universe. Belutha thinks he's probably nuts, but the thing is his cooking starts changing lives, including Belutha, and she finds her angry heart starting to open for the first time, both to Bill and to what it is that he seems to know about who we really are and where we're really from. So that's my tease of the novel. Were I able to do a screen share, and I'm kind of tempted to try, but I'm resisting, I would show you my Instagram page. If you were to go check it out, it's at Joe the Stillman, or if you were to search under Joe Stillman or my book's name, The Man Who Came and Went, you'd probably find it. And there's a lot of Bookstagram reviews there, as well as a lot of excerpts. The same can be said on my website, joestillman.com. So there is my kind of short spiel.
Well, thank you. And if you want to try your screen share, we have a few minutes.
Well, I'll be brave now and
Okay, might
give
as
it a
well.
shot.
You know what? And while you're loading that up,
This is what I would have
wants to know
shared.
if your story is appropriate for young adults and teens in addition to adult readers.
Most definitely. The narrator, Belutha, is 16. So I would say yes, keeping in mind that I work in show business and I want people to read my book. But if you say like a 12-year-old or 13-year-old, I would say maybe not, but somebody a little bit older, especially Belutha's age, I would say yes.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to
try to
stop screen
share?
sharing. Oh, you got it?
We haven't seen it.
Oh, you didn't see anything?
No.
Oh, far out.
Oh, I didn't realize you had screen share.
Well, apparently I didn't. So.
Apparently you did not.
Okay.
Which just kind of fits how the evening is going, right?
I like to blend in if I can with
Exactly.
zeitgeist.
Thank you, Joe. Fascinating. I love the book, by the way. And I just want to remind everyone that you can still order copies of their books. They all provided signed book plates. So when you order a book through adventuresbythebook.com, you will get a book along with a signed book plate, specially for you, that we will ship directly to you in the convenience of your home. Not quite Amazon, but you know, it's Adventures by the Book. Come support us, right? And our authors. For the winners tonight for Book Bingo, we are going to do a random drawing because of all the technical difficulties we had. Not everybody could type into the chat box or the Q&A box, and we want to be fair, so we're just going to make it entirely random, and we will notify you tomorrow of the winners. And I want to give all our authors a chance to make a final word. So if you want to have, if you want to tell us about anything you're working on, any exciting awards you've won, you know, talk to your readers, anything you want to say. And Joe, since you're up, you might as well go ahead and final thoughts for tonight.
Sure. Final thoughts. It's I try to be funny because I'm a comic writer. This book, I believe, will be really touching as well. And if you were to say, not to compete with Susan, but if you were to look at some reviews on Amazon, I think you would get a sense of that it has had some impact and touch people. And I really feel grateful about that. And so I just wanted to put that out there. And
That's
thank you
nice.
again, Susan and Debbie.
Thank you, Joe. It was a pleasure. And, that's a good reminder that Joe put out there, is that, authors really depend on your reviews on Goodreads
Yeah.
and Amazon. So if you can take a moment, even if you just give it a starred rating, not 1 star, a starred, many stars rating, you don't have to write up a whole novel about it. Just a few words, loved it. They would really be grateful for that. So I hope you take the time to do that. And for those of you who ordered books tonight, thank you for doing so and supporting our authors. It's been a really difficult journey through COVID for these authors to come. They haven't been able to do in-person book tours, and this is the way they can do it, is through Zoom and events like this. So your support really means a lot to them and to us. So thank you. Jill, Paul, final thoughts.
Well, first of all, I need to buy all the books by the other panelists tonight because they sound brilliant, just fascinating. And thank you so much for that. To any readers watching out there, please do get in touch with me either through Novel Network. I love coming to book groups. It's always great fun. And I really don't mind staying up late at night. I'm quite a party girl, the best of times. And this is absolutely fine. And yeah, I'm really easy to find on social media and spend far too much time on there. So I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I even have a YouTube and a TikTok account. My goodness. So yeah, please do get in touch, and through my website, or has got all the bits listed. And thank you so much, Susan and Debbie, for hosting this tonight. It's been really good to be here.
Our pleasure. And thank you again for joining us so late. And if ever there was a good time to book Jill for a visit, it's now, because, all things are about the Queen and Great Britain right now. And Jill can provide the accent and the backdrop and share her great story as well. So thank you, Jill, for joining us. Kerry.
So, Canadian girl, I just have to say, I was in a line. I was at a writing conference. I live in the States now, but somebody was in the line with me and said the Queen died. And I was like, oh my God, I was right there in the middle of everything. I had to go, God save the Queen. And everybody just looked at me like I was weird because they don't get that. But anyway, I also, my to be read lit pile just went up enormously, so I have to get everybody's books. This was really fun. I had a blast. My book, again, it's fun, but there is some little bit deeper things in there. I always say I'm not gonna, but you all will always find some emotional journeys going on, sometimes on the deeper, darker side. I deal with grief and loss, but there's always kind of a happy ending, because that's the kind of person I am, and that's the way I live my life. Again, if you want to play treasure hunt, you can sign up for that on my website, just at allthingskerry.com. And thanks so much to Debbie and Susan for running this amazing opportunity. And I love book clubs too. Actually, I'm putting together a fun little book club package. So sign up and I'll give you some questions and some snack and drink ideas to go with the book and all that kind of stuff.
Sounds great, Kerry.
Thanks, everybody.
You. And I feel like after talking to all of you tonight, I've always wanted to do an author talent show, and I'm going to expect Jill and Robert out there specifically to be dancing, and it could be really fun. So stay tuned for that, right? And I
can play the tuba, Susan, just so you know. It's been a while, but
all right, good to know. Good to know. Robert, final thoughts. Oh, you're muted. Robert, you're muted.
I was saying my talent is surfing. And we have a big swell here in Southern California. I live in Malibu, and so I was out there today surfing. And I always throw a surfing scene in my books because, as someone once told me, we need more surfing scenes. And so I always try to throw in a surfing scene or a surfing scene where a shark comes by, because people seem to like those too. And those things do happen. Look, I was really impressed with the event and my panel members, my fellow authors. You were all amazing, and your books sound incredible. So I'm really looking forward to reading them, and I'm just grateful to be here with everyone.
Thank you. We enjoyed having you as well. Denise, final thoughts.
Growing up, my family had a dog named Bingo, and unfortunately, Bingo died, and he was promptly buried in the backyard under a big rock. So my relationship with Bingo was fraught.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
And there is a dog at Jamestown who has a similarly tragic chapter in the novel. So dogs are near and dear to me, in spite of their inability to have the longevity that we enjoy. But thank you so much. And I really enjoyed this. It was really fascinating.
Thank you. And thank you to all of you who are typing in the Q&A box for your kind thoughts and your support as we encountered these technical difficulties today, but the show must go on, and we did. And thanks to Debbie, especially to Debbie, because she runs the Book Bingo behind the scenes, which is a lot of work. You have no idea how much goes behind it. But tonight she had double duty because she's typing everything in the chat box, managing the bingo, and typing everything in the Q&A box, and and translating some of the messages that come through. So a special thanks to Debbie. Final thoughts, Jeffrey Blount.
Oh, Susan, thanks to you and Debbie for inviting me. I truly enjoyed it. Denise, I want to tell you, I grew up a half hour away from Jamestown, and it was every year a school trip to Jamestown. So, that took me back. And Joe, I really liked the idea of laughing and then thinking. And one of the things I loved about the author, John Irving, was that on one page I could be crying, and on the next page, I would have to sit and read a line a few times to come to grips with what was happening. So I'm really looking forward to getting your book and reading it. As all of you, I love being a part of the literary community. I love talking to writers. I love talking to people who love good books and love to read. So I'm also open to book clubs and look forward to talking to as many readers as possible. For me, writing is a passion that has always been there. Joe, this book started, you talked about how long yours took. My book talk, I actually go through this, but I started writing this book in the late 1980s and got many rejections and many rejections and many rejections until one day an agent actually reached out to me. And that's how out of the blue, and that's how this started, because I had written a novella, and the novella was being talked about at a seminar, and the agent called me from there, and that's how we got. So I started in the 80s. It was published in 2019. So it was a long run, but it's worth it. I love the art form, and I always remind people of Margaret Atwood's great quote: "A word after word after word is power."
Wow, that's a great way to close. Thank you, Jeffrey. Thank you to all 6 of our authors who were fabulous tonight. Their books are fabulous. They want to talk to you and your book club. They want you to read their book. They want you to write a review. And we will pick 6 random winners, and maybe you will be one of the lucky ones. We'll notify you tomorrow and let the authors know where they can ship their books to. And one final thought, because we are crazy, we typically don't do back-to-back events, but we're going to be logging off of this event and logging right onto another event starting at 6 p.m. Pacific in about a half an hour. And we're going to be talking with astrophysicist and folklorist Dr. Moya McTeer, who is going to be in conversation with the CEO of Melier Wine. It's going to be a fascinating conversation on Fireside. So you have time to download the app on the Apple Store or listen in on our public profile page, firesidechat.com/Susan Macbeth. I hope to see you there. Thank you again to all our authors, to Debbie, all our adventurers. Your support has been incredible. We once again apologize for the technical difficulties tonight. We will be back in November for our next bingo. We're finalizing the roster now. So we're hoping to do that in the middle of November for a holiday shopping theme. So thank you again, everybody. Have a great evening and happy reading. Bye.